Touch is our most intimate sense. On a clear day, we can see for miles. With the right acoustics or technology, we can speak and be heard in the back of a very large room. But touch demands contact. It does not work at a distance. Through touch, we caress and are caressed. Through touch, we can raise a glass and commemorate small victories and critical milestones. Through touch, we open doors, literally and figuratively. About touch, Margaret Atwood wrote that it comes before sight, that it comes before speech. It is the first language, and it is our last, and it always tells the truth. Like truth, human touch sensation is complex. It is assembled from the information of thousands of sensory neurons that infiltrate our entire skin. Some let us know and tell stories about a gentle nudge. Others about the slip of an object we're about to drop, or the grip of a good friend in a handshake or a hug. Touch also tells us about remote communication with our cell phones buzzing in our back pockets. We heard this morning about some other ways in which the amazing complexity of touch sensation could be harnessed to give people additional sensations that they might lack. These features of touch sensation are fascinating. They make the sense robust, but they also raise barriers for study. Which subset of neurons do we study? Does body position matter when we go about trying to understand how they work at a fundamental cellular and molecular level? In my research, I chose to lower this barrier by studying a simple animal, a microscopic roundworm that has only 6 touch receptor neurons that cover its body from head to tail. 6 is a number I can handle. 60,000? Maybe not. My group of neurobiologists, cell biologists, engineers, and physicists has been making use of this microscopic worm, C. elegans, to understand how touch happens. We ask questions like, what is the physics of how the energy delivered in a touch gets transmitted through the skin to the neurons that are embedded within it? What are the proteins that function as sensors in those neurons, and how do they operate? So far, we've learned that a single touch in one location deforms the neuron across space, that it activates protein receptors that are ion channels made up of at least 4 proteins, and those channels are also distributed within the neuron. So touch may happen in one location, but be spread out across the skin's surface. We're testing the idea that those ion channel receptors get tugged sideways during a touch, and that that tug is resisted by a bundle of microtubules, cellular skeleton elements, inside the neuron. Microtubules have many functions in cells and in neurons. One of the most famous is that they're really important for cell division. They're also a key target for anti-cancer drugs. Patients who receive chemotherapeutics that target microtubules also experience numbness, tingling, and pain sensation, a common peripheral neuropathy that's observed in more than 50% of patients. Now, I knew this, but it became real for me when I was speaking on the phone with my mother-in-law several years ago while she was undergoing treatment for breast cancer. And she described the difficulties that she was experiencing with everyday activities, like getting dressed, preparing food, eating. And I'm thinking, as I'm listening, wow, that kind of stinks. And then I'm thinking, hold on, wait, isn't touch what you study? Isn't that the sense that's needed for all of these daily activities to go right, to happen without our needing to think about them consciously. Couldn't I do something? But remember, I studied this microscopic worm. But then I thought about it more, and I started doing some reading, and I realized that maybe we could make some headway with our microscopic worm and our expertise. So what we're finding so far is that we can treat C. elegans nematodes with chemotherapy drugs, and it impairs their touch sensation. Okay, step one, got that. Got to have something to study. And so far, we've identified a gene that's part of a famous signaling pathway that when we knock out that gene and we treat the worms with the chemotherapy drug, they're completely protected. Their touch sensation stays intact. So this is pretty cool. We're continuing to learn more about that target and to use that also as a new entry point to understand not only how touch happens at the level of the physics and the biophysics of it, but how it's maintained in normal situation and how it is disrupted during chemotherapy treatment. So I want to leave you with a couple of things, which is that we can make great headway by simplifying the problem, by studying an animal whose sense of touch might be less rich than ours, but the simplicity has value in and of itself. And then also by using our empathy to think about how we as scientists can use that knowledge to understand significant issues in human health. My name is Miriam Goodman, and I believe that by studying a simple animal, a tiny microscopic worm, we can decipher our most intimate sense. Through this research and the fundamental knowledge that we generate, we may help to reconnect cancer survivors and cancer patients with their bodies, their lives, their selves, and their loved ones. Thank you.
Thanks to all of our speakers for these micro speeches that give us a taste or a sight of what they're doing. You can read more about their research and more details and other exciting research that are happening at Stanford, both in their Stanford profiles and also on Scope Brief. If you haven't done this already, if you log on to the Stanford Medicine alumni website, med.stanford.edu/alumni, you will find a wealth of information both about recent developments and all of the publications, digital publications there. That includes the Stanford Medicine that comes to your mailbox, Stanford Medicine magazine that comes to your mailbox. There's a digital version of it. And also there's a link at the very bottom of the page for Scope Brief, which talks about the exciting Stanford research that's happening. I also want to remind you of an email that's been coming as part of the Stanford Medicine outreach program. It's called The Brief. You get that email from Dean Miner, but actually Dean Miner does not write it. It comes from our office forwarding, but he writes it. So the brief email comes into your mailbox, and you can opt out or you can opt in. That shows up at the end of the month, around the 28th or 29th every month, for those of us still work for a living, around the time where your paycheck hits the bank. So it actually, so the scope, while the scope talks about the research elements of it, the brief talks more about the medical center, the development, and the dean's visions. So those are all interesting and important ways for you to stay connected and feel the vibe that's going on the farm.